All right, friends, we'd like to welcome you back to another spellbinding episode of V8 Radio. I'm your host, Kevin Oeste, joined as always by our esteemed co-host, Mr. Mike Clarke.
Happy New Year, Kev.
Yes, Happy New Year to you too. A couple weeks into it already.
Right. It's flying by already.
Can't tell by the weather.
No, you cannot. Good gravy. Today was black ice and car crashes all around me.
Yeah, that's not fun.
Nope.
Here, where I'm at, just outside of the bustling metropolis of Red Bud, Illinois, home of V8 Global Headquarters, it was actually in the, pushing the 50s today, so it's starting to come around.
Really?
Yeah, but so I ventured back out into the garage, and it's probably low mid 30s out here tonight.
All right.
Brave in the cold, but it's all good.
Right on.
Yeah.
Right on. Good deal.
So, anything new and exciting on your end?
I'm a breath away from getting my engine back, albeit not complete.
Holy mackerel!
But finally, you talked me into it, and Kelly encouraged me to take some steps to get that back, and I did what I had to do. So all I got to do is pay the outstanding balance on it, and I can go get it.
Well, right on. So I don't think we've really touched on the scenario that went down.
No,
the events leading up to you potentially getting the engine for your GTO home from the machine shop after 26 months or something, but nobody's counting.
Something close to that. Well, it'd be 2 years this April or May, so closing in on 2 years.
Yeah. So let's recap the end of this, shall we?
Sure, let's do it.
Hold on, but before we do, did you catch that?
Okay. Oh,
on this show,
I know where you're heading.
Yes, we oftentimes throw out a trivia question, automotive-related trivia question, to try and give you something to a little. Hey, thanks for listening to the whole show. Mm-hmm. And this time we actually conveniently created another hook with the trivia question, because now they're waiting to hear about your engine.
Right.
We're terrible. Right. Man, we're just cruel.
We're starting to really figure this whole show thing out.
Yeah, right.
We really did our show prep today.
Yes, I did. So do you have a trivia question?
Indeed I do, sir. And you know what? I feel kind of bad for that last one, our end-of-year trivia question.
I was going to say, did you dumb it down about 200 notches?
Yeah,
for the old guy here?
I just slapped you all over the place on that one, and I don't think anybody would have gotten that. So yeah, I think I'm taking it easy on you this time. So if you're ready, I'm ready.
All right. Well, I'm ready. Thank you for considering my fragile ego. So what do you got?
Okay. As we all know, Chevrolet never had an 83 Corvette. We went from 82 straight to 84 for various reasons. However, there were some 1983 prototypes that were made. How many prototypes were created, and how many survive today?
What?
What do you mean? That's a softball for a guy like you.
All right, so let me just make sure I got the terminology correct here. So a prototype is, according to my understanding, is pre-production.
Yes, pre-production.
Now, are we talking a prototype for the eventual 1984 model launch?
I'm talking about the pre-production prototypes that were built to be the 83 Corvette, which was going to be the C4. The 83 would have been the C4 Corvette.
Right. So you got prototypes, then you've got some engineering mules that are fully functioning cars that are driving around. Then you have a pilot car, which is kind of like the first one down the line to test the assembly process, which eventually, many pilot cars got scrapped, but some got sold. So
Well, we know none got sold.
Okay, all right. I'm just trying to land here on,
You're making this question a lot more difficult than I intended it to be.
Okay, so I'm going to make it even more ridiculous because when the 84 hit the streets, they had been developing it for many years.
Mm-hmm.
So are we talking something that was like, here, let's test out the drive line in, early 81? Is this looking at aerodynamic stuff back in 78? Because Corvettes don't just happen.
All right, we're just gonna cut to the chase on this one. How many survive today? How many of these prototypes are there?
All right, I'm going to say, I have no idea because there's too many variables. I'm going to say 3.
All right.
Kevin says 3. Done with this whole thing already.
God damn it. Jesus, man. It was a simple question.
What's the matter with you? But you see what I'm saying here. It gets murky real fast because, the equivalent would be saying, okay, so the C8 Corvette is rumored to be mid-engine.
Mid-engine.
So how many mid-engine prototypes were there? Well, there was mid-engine Corvette prototypes in the 60s. And they all
meant to be
all
2018
technically
or 2019 vet.
It just happened that way. They just, the stuff they learned then might have been shelved and brought back, and
All right. I think you're digging a little deeper than necessary, but that's okay.
Well, it still hurts to sit down after the last one. So, all right. So I'm going to say there was 3. That's my final answer.
All right. Kevin says 3 is final answer. I will say that you can see that there are more than 0. And you can see them at the National Corvette Museum.
Good. I'll have to go there and check them out, however many there are.
Yes, indeed.
Okay, I'm going to reciprocate with a softball question of my own. What was the first year for bucket seats in an American full-size car, and what was it?
All right, first year for bucket seats in a full-size car.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. An American full-size car.
Right, because European cars never had anything else.
They don't count. Right.
Nice.
Okay. Well, all right. Let me think about this.
And I will say just the front. It's not something tricky like, all bucket seats, just front bucket seats as
just front bucket.
Traditionally accepted definition.
Okay.
Spellbinding, isn't it?
Yeah, that's a real softball, Kev.
Yeah.
That's like fast pitch right there. Fast pitch, 12-inch. I thought I was looking for 16-inch.
Yeah.
Chicago rules. Come on, buddy.
That's right.
All right. Oh God, I'm trying to sort through this here.
Well, share the process.
Yeah. Let's see. A full-size car.
Mm-hmm.
I would think it would be a brand that would be known for maybe a sporty kind of a car.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they wanted to kind of give that feel to the full size, or maybe it's just a luxury thing.
Mm-hmm.
So the question was what brand?
First year for bucket seats.
First year
in an American full-size car.
Bucket seats in a full size, and what was it?
And what was the car?
Okay. I'm going to say 1959 Cadillac.
Wow. I'm going to write this down. 1959 Cadillac.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. So, what, okay, that's what you're going to go with? That's your final answer?
That's my final answer. That's just what popped into my head.
Right on. Well, there you go. It's been noted.
Among a few other select adjectives.
I bet. All right. Well, that's been noted, and we'll find out later if you are in fact correct. 1959 Cadillac is a full-size car for sure.
It is a full-size car.
And an American one. So,
Indeed.
yeah, right on. Okay, so now back to the task at hand here. So for almost a couple of years now, we've been following along as your 67 GTO engine has been out of the vehicle getting a rebuild in the ether somewhere.
Yeah, it's gotten to the point where I've waited long enough. I want this back. I want to get this finished on my terms. And you had come up with the idea when we talked last on the air to say, hey, you're selling the car, you're selling the engine, you got to get it back.
Well, that wasn't my idea either. That was a gentleman we were talking to at the Muscle Car and Corvette Nationals who came up with that idea.
Oh, that's right.
And there was a handful of us talking, and I don't remember exactly who it was. So maybe I told you, but it was somebody else's idea.
I gotcha. Okay.
And the reason there is, so this engine build isn't like he's got to weld the block back together using, sticks and a piece of steel and flint or something. I mean, it just turns out to be taking far too long for really unknown reasons.
Well, yeah. So, like I said, enough was enough. The idea was floated to say, just tell him you sold the car. You got to get the engine back. So that's what I did. And it worked. So he finally called me back, and we talked about it, and he told me everything he had done, everything he has in the engine, and what the balance due was based on the deposit I put down. So
nice.
So that's all that's left to do.
And
then
plus the involvement.
Then it's all on me now.
Well,
which is fine.
But we did have the involvement of Kelly calling to shake him down.
We did have the involvement of Kelly. That's one phone call I do not want to get, man.
Well, that's how stuff gets done.
Yeah.
and she was very frank with him. And the whole point of this little ruse of I've sold the car is not to be, dishonest in any way. But what we've learned is that for whatever reason, unfortunately, somebody else is apparently more important than you, which really kind of sucks because you called and harassed them and not harassed, but you were nice and, do you need anything? What else can I do here? And unfortunately, you were just not getting the progress that you wanted. Well, so she called up and said, hey, I just bought this car and this engine and I'm picking it up on Tuesday and let's go. And I think it obviously greased the wheels a little bit.
Yes, you could say that.
Well, and kind of the nice result is really at the end of the day, it's kind of no fault. Nobody had to really be a jerk about it.
Right.
Because that's not what anybody wanted. You just wanted your engine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So when you do pick this thing up after you pay the final bill, what are you going to be getting back?
Well, the block, of course. The rods, pistons, crankshaft. We took the rods back out. I'm sorry. The main bearings. He's gonna take back out in the rings. He said just to save some balance. Take some of the balance off. Which I can get bearings and rings anywhere. So I'm not worried about that. So, but he did say it's been balanced, which is nice. So that helps out a lot. And there's a couple of parts that, my crankshaft pulley was there. And so he remembered that. Yeah, so we'll get that back.
Yeah. Cool. So you'll still have the opportunity to assemble this thing.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
But everything has been test fitted and machined and so they dunked the block and cleaned it and bored it and line bored it. And
yes, it's been honed. I showed up at his shop one day when he had it on the line bore machine, and he was line honing it and getting everything straightened out, which is pretty cool to watch.
Yeah.
So
awesome.
Cool.
So then you're right. Cool then soon it will be all on you now.
Yep, and I'm totally fine with that. I'm more fine with that than anything else.
Right. Well, the nice thing is at least it's back on in your territory, and if you don't get it done in a weekend, it doesn't matter to anybody. It's your deal.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I hope to have it done in time for the V8 drive-in spectacular.
Oh, hey, well that would be great. And you know what? That's I think that's a fairly comfortable target, which is, as we're recording this in the end of January, our V8 drive-in cruise is the 4th annual this year, and it will be on August 16th. And people. The guy listening.
Trevor.
Yeah. Well, we got a couple people now. It's the 3 people listening.
I think we got 3 people.
Yeah. They're thinking, well, why does it take from January to August? But you're a regular guy. You've got family commitments. You've got, family household budget and everything else. So I think that's a comfortable, non-stressful. Something's not going to go right. You know that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There will be pain. So
hopefully not much, but it's not like you're getting a complete kit dropped off at your doorstep that just needs two turns of the screwdriver and it's done.
Right. Yeah. It needs stuff. I still need to source the right cam for this thing as well. So I still have to get the whole valve train. So.
And you had the heads done a long time ago, right? The heads are ready.
Right. The heads are all done.
Yeah.
They'll have to actually, they'll have to be disassembled because if I use a roller cam, I have to get different valve springs.
Right. Right.
Because the ones I have are for an 068 cam, so they're pretty lightweight in relation. So.
On kind of a side note, it turns out that 67 GTO that we're restoring in our shop right now, we've gotten to the point of getting ready to kind of freshen that engine up. It was rebuilt. It only has about 1,000 miles on it, but it was rebuilt in the late 80s.
Holy cow.
So it has time on it. It doesn't have any miles on it. And Tyler, our technician, tore it down and inspected everything, and everything looks really, really nice. And he found a neat trick that you don't often see on Pontiac cylinder heads, and that is that the rocker studs were bored for big block Chevy-style rocker studs, which now makes it an adjustable valve train.
Yeah. Yeah. I have a set of big block studs for my heads.
There you go.
Yeah.
I
thought that was pretty cool too. Yeah.
Yeah, pretty basic. Otherwise, you're switching out push rods over and over again. You get mad.
Right.
So, good. Right on. Well, that is all good
times,
news.
Man.
Yeah.
I'm pretty stoked about it.
You thought about finishes on the outside of the block?
Well, it'll be metallic Pontiac blue, of course.
Right, but there's more to it than just that. Is this going to be a VHT rattle can? Is it going to be a modern base clear urethane custom blended in the color? Is it going to be an Eastwood ceramic out of the can with a spray gun?
Jesus H. Criminy.
See?
So many painting choices. I had it in my head just to use a VHT rattle can. I mean, the block, I'm not worried about so much paint lifting or anything, but it's those stinking heads that just beat the jeepers out of any paint you really put on them. So that's my big thing. I'd love to have it so it lasts a little bit, and maybe get at least a year of use out of it before those exhaust ports start peeling and blistering.
Well, I know that, typical automotive base coat, even with a clear or a single stage, tends to stand up really well. You're right, it does burn in those ports. We've had good success with that ceramic-based stuff that Eastwood sells. But as we're talking about this, I'm wondering, and this would not be a low-budget proposition, but I'm wondering if one of the coating companies could ceramic coat them.
That'd be cool.
Because we're just about to set off some side pipes from a replica Cobra that a customer has, and he wants them all blacked out. And we've dealt with a bunch of companies on that stuff in the past for headers and stuff and exhaust manifolds. And if you get them ceramic, they tend to last quite a while. But I've never seen a ceramic in a metallic Pontiac blue. I got to ask.
I could be the first.
Yeah, you could. You could be leading the way there.
Right on. Huh. Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And then, of course, there's always the aluminum solution, too. You know, you could just dump the heads.
Yeah.
But maybe that's a project after all the paint peels off these.
Yeah.
That's a good motivator.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that would be pretty slick. I mean, my God, aluminum heads float so great right out of the box.
Yeah.
I mean, way better than the cast iron ever did with a lot of port work.
Yep. But, there's some nice off-the-shelf options, too, for Pontiac. So.
Yeah, there really is. I mean, KRE has good heads, and Edelbrock has good heads.
Mm-hmm.
So you got two good ones right there.
They're very light, and they take the equivalent amount of money as weight of aluminum to buy them sometimes, and that's the problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, they're not terrible, but...
Yeah, but they don't give them away.
No, they don't.
But...
So,
why would they?
But that brings up kind of an interesting point recently. So the last episode we addressed some of the comments that we were seeing on social media about various topics.
Oh, right.
Yeah, and I think, coincidentally, I got an email today from one of the Pontiac forums, just kind of their update thing. And they were kind of comparing, are the forums days numbered because of the group thing on social media?
Right.
And I don't think so. I think the information is so much easier to find, and you have such a greater aggregation of knowledgeable people on a legitimate forum versus, a Facebook page.
True.
They're still helpful, without a doubt. It's nice to have both.
Sure.
But recently, again, along that same ripped from the headlines kind of theme, there's been a topic that's really kind of getting on my nerves on the Facebook groups, and it's the subject of paint jobs. Again, paint jobs. And I don't know if we've covered a little bit of this in the past, but the topic that keeps popping up is some person, and it doesn't matter what the group. I've seen it in, the Chevelle group or a Mustang thing or classic Buicks or whatever. And it's, hey, what should I pay for a good paint job for my car? And here comes the river of feedback from people, and you'll see numbers that are not substantiated by anything, which I understand. Not everybody does this for a living, and there's a lot that goes into it. What gets me aggravated is when somebody starts, militantly shouting about the numbers that are being out there and claiming to be an expert because of something that their friend got or they saw once or whatever.
Right.
And one of them was, this guy was doing I think he was doing a Chevelle. It was a couple of years ago, actually. He was doing a Chevelle, and he was threatening his painter on social media, saying,
"Oh, geez,
this guy charged me X amount of money," and he put the actual dollar amount. It was a good amount of money. It was like $23,000, and my car's not done yet, and let's go bring torches and pitchforks, and it's I'm trying to kill this guy's business because he won't return my calls or whatever. And instantly, there was 150 comments of people saying, I'd sue him, and this is BS, and take him to court, whatever.
Right.
Go get your car and set his shop on fire. And finally, the guy doing the work stepped up, and he said, well, here's my side if anybody's interested. And he showed pictures of the car, and what the customer was including in a paint job was like almost every metal panel on the car had to be replaced. And this guy did the work. And he put quarters and floors and door skins and fender repairs and gapped everything and aligned it and then body worked the whole thing. And he painted the frame and disassembled the chassis. And he was getting ready to do primer to get the final outside into color. And he was at $23,000. And he said, I'm charging you like...
Really?
It turned out to be like $18 an hour.
Yeah. I was going to say, this guy's giving it away.
Right. And see how fast the story changes?
Yeah. Oh, for sure. For sure.
Right. And I've been on both ends of the story, because people who don't do it every day, they don't know what it takes. And there's no real standards out there of what a paint job, really is.
Right.
So in our shop, we always try to sit down and educate people ahead of time and have this conversation and say, look, there are many, many variables, and of course the expensive materials and everything else that go into this. And once they start to get a handle on it, then they can see, and it becomes, realistic again. But what people are, I think my whole point here is that I would love to shed a little bit of light on some questions to ask. When somebody says, how much should a paint job cost? Rather than just throw out, it should be $3,500 and you shouldn't pay a dime more.
Right. Or, if all you're doing is laying down color, maybe that's it.
Yeah. What does a paint job mean? And because I know going to some of these events and being out in the world, I think the most expensive, paint project, which did not include total restoration of mechanicals and not the whole car restoration, but I've seen $250,000, paint refinishes. And at that level, it's mind bending, and you are starting to pay a premium for the individual's name who did the work.
Yeah.
Most shops can't do that. You can't say, well, it's an extra $20 because this guy's doing it, It's not a designer application. But the first thing to understand is that when you figure out what it is that you want done, like any restoration, these projects tend to grow from what the original thought is, purely because more things are revealed along the way that need attention. And, that old story, it's, well, I want this car to come in looking not so good and leave looking nice. And what does it take to connect those two dots? And a lot of that is, well, you might have to take it apart farther than you think so that the painter has access to the panels and there might be rust underneath and all that stuff. But there is no apples to apples comparison a lot of times. And what people don't seem to understand is that if you want a good, high quality paint job that is worthy of bringing home an award at an event or, a magazine feature or something like that, you have to hit the details. And the details are what take all the time. And an example of this, I kind of broke down just for simple round numbers. This is not a real case study. This is just off the top of my head. Refinishing and fixing one body panel. We're just going to say a fender at this point. And, to somebody who doesn't do this every day, they think, okay, well, you got your fender and maybe you sand it down a little bit and then you pound on it a little bit and maybe you slap a little filler on and sand that, then you prime it and then you paint it and you're done. And the whole thing could be done in, 10 hours, 8 to 10 hours.
Easy peasy, lemon squeezy.
That's it. But what they're not taking into consideration is that before our shop even starts any of that, we probably spend, 15, 20 minutes on that fender just dimensioning the whole thing so that we know how it fit when the car came in. So we run around with a dial caliper and measure the gap all the way down the hood between the fender and the door, at the bottom, how the grill fit, how the fender extension fit, how the headlight and all that stuff, so that at the end of the process, when we put it back together, it goes either back together in the same way or it's better.
Right.
So that could be a half an hour. Realistically, if you think about it, we stretch some masking tape around all the perimeter edges. We write down all the measurements. We photograph it all. Seems like it could be a half an hour. Well, just that is a detail that just starts adding up, and nothing even happened to the car yet.
Right.
So, then you're looking at, in that process, you're looking at if there's any shims or what kind of hardware is there, and does any of that need to be addressed? Do you have rusty shims? Well, that means you got to get some new shims, and not that shims are expensive, but got to get the right thickness if it fits right.
Right.
And find that kind of stuff. And then to start to put a wrench to the thing to get that fender off the car, what do you need to take off? Do you need to take off the grill, the bumper, the fender extension, the wheel tire? Do you got to jack the car up? Do you, do you have to clean it all off first? Has it been driven through the mud? Because you can't work on a repaint with mud. So now, you're at, by the time you spin the wrenches and get the fender off the car, you could be at 4 or 5 hours.
Yeah, good Lord. At X amount per hour of labor of shop time. I mean, you're not that deep into it, and you're already in the hole. I mean, you're already
at $300-400
hundreds of dollars into it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And is anybody a crook at this point?
No,
no,
not at this point.
but even to go just that far, you bring the car to the shop, and this process happened. Now you get a bill in the mail, and the bill says, and a photograph, and it shows that your car's sitting there, and the fender is off, and you get a bill for $400. I mean, I can see how people would run right to the internet and say, "Are you kidding me? This guy charged me $400 to take my fender off," and then all of his friends are going to gang on and say, "This guy's a crook, run him out of business."
Mm-hmm.
But providing that detail of all the things that occurred is crucial, so that the guy writing the checks understands what's going on.
Yeah.
And then
he knows why he's writing that check.
That's right. And there's a weird thing that happens sometimes with the restoration business and many enthusiast type businesses, where the job is something that is a paid version of somebody's hobby, right? People that are customers oftentimes think that, well, this is what you do for fun. This is a hobby. I can do this in my own garage, but I just don't have the time, and I don't pay myself, so it's hard for them to pay somebody else. So, as a customer, you really have to have the mindset that you're hiring a team of experts to do what they do, maybe do what you can't do, or do what you won't do, or do what you can do but far better. Right. And that has value. And if you're not ready to do that, do yourself and the shop a favor and just don't even start the process. If you're going into a shop not trusting from day one, it ain't going to go.
Yeah, you've already decided that you're going to have a bad experience regardless of what happens.
Right.
Yeah, and you can't win. You can't win when somebody has that attitude.
No, it's tough. And at the same time, I'm not saying blind faith, write checks blindly and just go to town, but it is very challenging for any shop to write an estimate or a quote for this type of work, because every single car is different. Mm-hmm. They're 50 years old.
Yeah.
Who knows how many times this thing's been hit and crushed and bent and rusted and repaired underneath already.
Right.
And not only that, today's body filler is so good, I'm convinced you don't even need a car anymore. You could sculpt the whole thing out of filler and block sand it and paint it. It would look great, and somebody could look at it and go, well, it really wasn't that bad. How come I need all this work? Well, underneath, it's not there. And if you want it done where it's all correct steel that fits properly in steel so that it lasts, a long, long time and you're happy with it, well, that's going to be the time. So how do you estimate that? Well, you can't until you get into it. And even then you can't. You could kind of go panel by panel and say, all right, in our little scenario here, so we got the fender off, and then we took a sander to it, and we stripped all the paint off, and what we like to do is have the edges media blasted so that it comes off quickly in the real intricate areas, but then we use dual action hand sanders and strip the big flat panels off so we don't get them warped or damaged.
Gotcha.
But here goes another, couple hours and the service provider of a media blaster. So, now you've got a stripped fender that's off the car and you're pushing, $800.
God dang it.
It's one piece, and
that's an eye opener.
But again, somebody who does this should and better, they owe it to their customer to articulate every single thing that happened, so that everybody's comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And
because if I get a bill that says $800 removed and stripped fender, I'm going to be a little pissed off.
You are, right. And that's the business of the shop, is to not be in the customer aggravation department.
Right.
Right. We want the customer to go, wow, that's awesome. But the first part of this process, it kind of sucks. There's not a lot of awesome, because you're revealing ugliness and you're doing things that are hard to grasp the time frame on. And it's not like, you know, I know in our own case, our shop is not inefficient the way we do the work. And we always invite customers to come down and visit anytime. Come down without warning, and you'll walk in and you won't see people standing around, and you know everybody's on point and on mission. But once that fender is stripped and we, you know, clean it properly and prep the steel properly, take it into the paint booth and shoot some epoxy on it. And now you got a few more hours into it. Now you got some material costs as well.
Yeah.
And that's when you really get to look at it and say, okay, well, this edge has rust. We got to repair this mounting hole. We find some dings and dents. You know, and that's when the hammer and dolly work starts, and maybe we do some patch panel work or whatnot. So that's an open-ended thing in some ways. Of course, as we're stripping it, you know, we always look at it right away and try to determine, is this whole thing going to be better if we just replace it, you know, and not spend the time. We always do that, and you weigh it out, and sometimes a customer will say, well, geez, you know, a good fender might be $600 or $700. That's expensive. But you can see where we're at already in repairing a messed up one. It's going to go far past that.
Right.
You know, so once kind of the big broad strokes are metal worked and fixed, you know, then the thing gets mounted back on the car and aligned, and the gap work is done, and that's a few more hours to get the thing back on the car and finessed into position, and that's when the body work starts happening. You know, when it gets filler spread on it and sanded off and block sanded to the panel next to it so it all fits, you know, perfectly smooth. And you know, there could be, you know, a guy could work on it for a day easily. That's 8 hours.
Yeah.
Guy works on a couple days, 2-3 days, 3-4 days.
Right.
You don't know. Re-drilling mounting holes for badges and stuff, or closing them up if you're not putting the trim on. You know, these are all little things.
Sure.
When the fender is sanded down from an 80 grit to a 180 grit, it gets primed again, and then it gets blocked again. But that means it had to come off the car and go back to the paint booth and get sprayed. And,
oh boy!
And again, a few more hours, and now you got a little more material. You got some primers, some cleaners, some solvents, some sandpaper, and at least it's starting to kind of look like a fender now. But we're a long way from it being shiny in color.
Right.
And not to bore everybody with every single detail, but there's once it's in primer, there's wet sanding that has to happen. There's cleaning. Then there might be a sealer process. We might have to mask the outside and clean and prep and paint the backside so it doesn't rust again, you know, or if it's going to get a black or something. And then it gets cleaned again and then reverse masked, and then the outside gets its final wet sanding and color application, and then finally the clear, and then it gets removed and unmasked and then wet sanded and buffed and then put back on the car. And then, you know, if there's any trim or whatever, you could be at, in this little silly example off the top of my head, that's 57 hours.
Oh, geez Louise.
On a fender. So, you know, is it fair to take that time? Because I just made all that up, essentially, you know, a few hours here or there. And say, well, you take that, I got 2 fenders, and I got 2 doors and a hood and a trunk and a roof and everything else. So now, you know, do we just do that by 6 or 7? And I don't know, you know, it depends. Because the other factor is, you know, things like door jambs and the backside of the hood and the backside of the trunk lid and the inside of doors. You know, if you want all that stuff done, it's more time with somebody having a sander and hand sanding and working the details. And at the end of the day, what's the quality level you want? Do you want this to be mirror glass flat paint that's perfect in every way, or are you okay with a little bit of orange peel in the texture so that it's got like an original style? The difference between having some orange peel and having a glass flat finish, it doesn't.
A few more hours.
It's a couple of more weeks is what it really is.
Oh, good heavens!
And it doesn't really have much to do with getting the edges and the door jambs and stuff like that, because that's going to happen regardless. But, you know, now you understand where, you know, somebody says, well, it cost me $20,000 to have this car painted. Plus the fact that materials, you know, a pint or a quart of a red can easily be $300-400. So you're looking at over $1,000 a gallon just for the color, and a whole car doing inside and outside and backsides and all that stuff. That could be 2 gallons. And that's not even the clear to go on top of it, or the reducers, or the hardeners, and the cleanup thinner, and the primers, and the sealers, and all the rest. So materials, we tell people, $3,000 to $5,000 for materials, including sandpaper and all the rest. And they look at me like I'm nuts, But when I show them the invoice from the paint company, then they start to understand a little bit. So this topic, next time you see somebody that throws it out there, and you'll find a few people that stand up and say, no, it takes $20,000 to paint a car for a nice paint job that you'd be proud to show. And then you have all the naysayers, it should have been $1,500, or you sue them.
Yeah. This ain't Mako. Yeah. For Pete's sake. And it ain't Earl Scheib. Any car, any color, $29.95. For crying out loud. So if that's what you're looking for, then, you're in the wrong place, fella.
Right.
Right.
So if you're having thoughts of going down that road and having that kind of work done, have this conversation with the service provider over and over again, and go through the shop and look at the panels and look at the cars and pay attention to, look for tape lines where are the door jambs, the old paint and they just painted, the big flat spots. Or is every area covered? Was the car completely disassembled when it got painted? And think to yourself, how long does it take to do that? Tear all the weather stripping out and put it all back in.
Oh, yeah. Jeez, didn't even think about that.
Sure, the glass, the trim around the windows. Because our example was a fender. A door is worse. All that stuff's got to come out. Yeah. And this was leaving something on the frame. So if you're going to take it off the frame, then of course you're going to refinish the frame. And again, the point of this isn't necessarily to scare people away that you need to be a millionaire, because a lot of the stuff you can do yourself, and it starts to frame people in on what's really more important. Is it something that they have to have that nice of a car, or do they just want something that's, looks okay or looks decent that they get more satisfaction driving, or whatever. And, a lot of times it's a better idea to just go buy a car that's already finished. Of course, there's that. The risk factor there is that, well, what's that one hiding?
Yeah, there's that.
Guys like you and I don't sit well with that.
Yeah.
So, So the more, it's like the old Saturday morning cartoons, the more you know, with the little shooting star.
Right.
And the other thing I would suggest is try not to get in a situation where you've written somebody a big check and then hope that they're going to get the work done to a certain degree. We invoice weekly just to try and keep everybody on the same page.
Sure.
I don't want a big deposit. I don't want people to say, I'll give you $20,000 cash today and just go paint the whole car. Right. Because it's not good for business cash flow. And it's, who knows? It could be less than that. It could be more than that. But I know as a customer, I wouldn't feel comfortable doing that. Because then you don't have any leverage along the way. But ask the technicians to be, have them tell you every single detail, and you'll feel much better about paying the bill, because you'll understand that you got a value and it's worth it.
Yeah, I do like seeing a nicely painted car.
Well, we all do.
Yeah,
and we all know what a not so nicely painted car looks like.
Yeah. I got one up in the garage.
Yeah, I'm leaning on one right now. That well, only because it's almost 20 years old. 21 years old. This paint job now.
Yeah,
good
paint
Lord.
Job on that goat is, God, how old is it? I think the old man had it painted in probably 93, maybe. So maybe 24, 25 years old.
Yeah. And that quarter of a century ago, it was probably in far better shape.
Yeah.
So it was probably much closer to a good old-fashioned repaint where they didn't have to take everything apart.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
like,
Oh, yeah. My old man, he could get things done on the cheap. The cheap, baby.
yeah, yeah.
Boy, I never knew anybody like him.
So
yeah.
Yeah, now's your chance to address those who had done the work for him.
Yeah, no doubt.
Over the years.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry about that you had to deal with that, you know.
Yeah, sorry, buddy.
It's great if you can get those kind of deals. It's hard to motivate somebody to care and do that kind of work.
Yeah, true. That's true.
That's
true.
So anyway, that's my my ripped from the headlines thing this time. Again, being close to it as we are, it's a little frustrating to see the Monday morning quarterbacks out there and
right,
and the people who don't tell the entire story.
Yeah, that's nothing can really turn a crowd on someone than the getting the complete picture.
Right.
Rather than just the one side. Like you said, when the painter stepped up and said, well, here's what's really happening.
Right. Like, and don't get me wrong, there are unfortunately, far too many characters out there who have taken the money and not done the work.
Right. True.
And
True.
We see that when you have a collision shop that relies on fixing bumper covers and crashed import daily drivers. Because insurance companies mandate they fix those cars right away. So that's when, if you have your car painted at a collision shop, your classic or whatever, it's going to get pushed to the back every time a new wrecked car comes in. Because that's just the business model. The insurance company, as soon as somebody crashes a car and brings it to a repair shop, they start a stopwatch because they're paying for a rental car. And
okay.
A lot of people don't know this, but body shops have a turnaround time standard that they're supposed to meet so that the insurance company continues to give them work because that's the customer. And if it takes one shop, an average 3 days to do a deer hit, bumper cover, hood, and headlights and stuff, and another shop takes on average 2 weeks, well, that other shop ain't going to get the work. The 3 day shop's going to get the work. So to shift gears and go, well, no, I'll tell you what, Mr. Insurance Company, I'm gonna defy you, and I'm gonna put my heart and soul into my buddy Mike's GTO repaint right now. It doesn't happen that much. So that's how these things turn into paint jail sentences for years.
Oh, okay. I never knew that. I mean, I've heard stories of cars being in paint shop purgatory.
Yep.
But never really understood why that would happen. But now now I do. Now I do.
So you might want to pick a shop that kind of specializes in doing classics and that doesn't take in collision work. And we don't do any collision work in our shop unless it's the occasional wrecked classic car,
Right.
And luckily,
you're dealing with like a Haggerty or a what you call it?
A Grundy or a
Grundy. Thank you.
One of the specialty insurance companies, and they understand, that doesn't have a deadline because it's not taking you to work in tomorrow morning.
Right. Yeah, they're not providing a rental or any of that kind of stuff. They're just getting your car fixed.
But there's a whole nother set of rules there too, and this is one that I encourage everybody to ask their insurance representative. Doesn't matter what company it is. What we've learned is that the purpose of the insurance is to bring the car back to the condition it was in the day before the wreck, essentially.
Right.
And what's happened to us, and we've only done a few of them, but each time a car has been wrecked and brought to our shop, and the customer says, okay, well, the front end got crunched, but there's a couple scratches on the roof, and there's a little thing on the deck lid, and maybe we could just get those at the same time. And that's not part of what the insurance is going to cover.
Yeah,
that's an out-of-pocket deal because it wasn't a direct result of the wreck. But what's worse is that, say for example, you had a car that was your typical kind of repaint, where you have original paint in the door jambs and a tape line and more, newer paint on the outside. That's all the insurance company is going to bring it back to.
Oh,
So
good Lord.
they're expecting to return that tape line and leave the door jamb alone.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and it's a real hard pill to swallow because every technician says, well, I'm here. I got it apart.
Yeah.
I'm going to fix that. But if you put an extra 6 hours into body working and sanding and priming and painting the whole door jamb area, the insurance company's going to come back and say, well, that 6 hours is not on us. That's on the customer.
Oof.
So,
gosh dang it.
Yes, it's a tough business, and we're very happy that there is collector car insurance out there where they don't just say, well, it's old, total it. It's a worthless pile. But as you communicate with your insurance agent, ask him, okay, so if I wreck this thing, and have him look at your specific car, and say, okay, well, I see over here that, this thing got kind of scratched up on the back part of the fender. If I buckle the front of it, are you guys going to do the whole thing, or, what am I going to be responsible for? And that's always kind of an eye opener. So,
yeah, well, that is interesting, my friend.
Well, and if you think about it, like a 1 or 2 or even a 5-year-old car, the rest of the car really isn't worn out. It hasn't been repainted already.
Right.
So you can just fix the fender and the hood, and the door is going to match and all the rest. And it's like it never happened. But when it's 50 years old and it's been through 2 restorations and a crash and a half, and some kid in his backyard spraying it, with a Wagner power painter or something back in the day, that's when all these things come to play. So, and then guess what? It's more expensive and it sucks. So,
yeah, I hear you.
Yeah. But it can be done, and it obviously the results are out there. So next time you're walking through a show or you see something on TV that looks really, really killer, you can appreciate. And I always think the true superstars, the guys and gals that are doing the work, that have the vision to see it as it comes in and see in their mind what it's going to look like at the end, and persevere and maintain that quality standard all the way through. And it doesn't matter if it's the dead set middle of the hood or the bottom corner of, underneath the deck lid. In our case, we try to make all that stuff the same standard. And that's why people come to us, because they know, if they go to their local cruise night and they crack the trunk to get their lawn chair and their cooler out, it's not a different color under the hood, under the deck. And their friend's not going to say, what'd you cheap out in that last corner? Whatever. And if it's a judging event, the judge will peek in there and say, wow, that looks nice.
Right. That's pretty cool. Yeah, I mean, if it is a judged car, you got to know at the shop, you have to research, well, is this trunk supposed to be splatter paint, or how far does it go? Is it supposed to be just a flat black finish? I mean, how's it supposed to be? Or the hinges supposed to be painted? What goes on here?
That's a big one too, because a lot of cars have overspray from the factory, and not even so much, the getting back to your trivia question, Corvettes were kind of the first ones that made people look at the factory flaws and reintroduce them with a restoration of, body color on a frame rail or something, where it was just haphazardly applied at the factory. But not only that, we did an El Camino for a guy a number of years ago, a 70, and he was adamant that when you open the hood, the cowl was red around the windshield base, but the cowl going forward where the firewall is black. And when Chevrolet painted that car, they didn't mask it. The spray gun left a soft edge between the red and the black, and he wanted us to recreate that. And our painter had such a hard time, because he's like, really? I don't want to. It's going to take me an hour to mask this thing and make it look perfect, And the customer's like, well, no, I really want this to have that authentic kind of look, So you're exactly right. Having a clear expectation of what you want. And it took longer to put the flaw back in than to just mask it.
Isn't that something? Took longer to make it look worse.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, good Lord. I mean, that's funny. To that point, a lot of GTOs had a little bit of that overspray on the firewall, but it depended on which factory
Mm-hmm.
it was manufactured in, whether how much overspray it was going to have. Like some said, well, the Baltimore plant used this type of gun, and they had a lot more overspray than, say, the Kansas plant did.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so I mean, that's how to the nth degree some of these crazy people go.
Oh yeah, and then it's also what shift at the plant and what time of year in the sequence.
Right.
You know, like 65 Chevelles, for example. There's a timeline on when the tail panels turn black for certain cars versus certain ones that were not black. You know, and that brings up another point is, okay, so you bring a car to a guy and you say, hey, I want this repainted, I want it accurate, I want it correct. But the original paint's long gone and there's nothing on this car to tell you a roadmap. And this guy takes, you know, a couple weeks here and there, looking on the internet, calling people, looking at some pictures, and he might have 10 hours into researching it. You know what? That's kind of part of the job, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And nobody likes to see research time on an invoice. But they want the direct result of that research. They want, you know.
Yeah.
So negotiate that up front. If a guy's going to be looking stuff up, you know, we throw that out to the customer and say, hey, tell you what, if you want to go ahead and find some diagrams or find some pictures of what this is supposed to be in your mind, we'll take them. I don't need to spend the time doing it. You know.
Well, that's good. That's real good. Like, you know, gives them the choice. So
right, exactly. So that's my as we you know start to turn the corner on wintertime and look forward to the spring events where people are going to be out there polishing them up again. I think that's what kind of, you know, a lot of people use the off season as time to repaint cars and get that kind of work done when it's off the road. Maybe that's why there were so many of them popping up on the social recently that started to drive me out of my mind. But
yeah, could be.
Hopefully I can walk the middle ground and see it from both sides.
Right.
Just help people.
Reasonable.
Just help people, you know, ask those questions so that you don't end up being angry. This is all about having fun and not being angry, right?
Right. Well, for some people, being angry is fun.
Yeah, that's right.
It keeps them warm in the wintertime.
Some people aren't happy unless they aren't happy.
Exactly. All right. We probably should get to these trivia question answers, eh?
Yeah, I've rambled quite a bit this time. So.
All right. I asked you the 83 vet prototypes, how many were there and how many exist today?
Right, and that was kind of a tricky question because I'd like you to expand a little bit on what that car actually is, barring the fact that I probably got this completely wrong.
Right. I mean, sure. I mean, okay. Well, I took it to be that the prototypes were to be the C4 vet, and but because of emission compliance issues, they were forced to scrap them, and I think they just weren't able to get them to market on time, so they carried over the 82 for another model year.
Okay.
But they created, my research tells me, they created 43 prototypes.
Wow.
And when they weren't going to go to market, GM ordered all 43 destroyed. Mm-hmm. However, they were able to destroy 42, but the factory workers kind of squirreled one away to escape the crusher, as it were, and they hid it around the factory over the years until they got a commitment from GM that it wouldn't be destroyed. And that single prototype now sits in the National Corvette Museum in Bowling Green, Kentucky.
Nice. So there's one, and what did I say? 3?
3. Yeah, Kevin said 3.
Nice. So I got that wrong.
Well, but you were close.
I don't feel so bad because I kind of knew I was getting that one wrong going into it. So I'm okay with that.
Kind of like I feel about mine.
Yeah. All right. So on the flip side, I asked you, what was the first year for bucket seats in an American full-size car, and what was the car? And you came back with the 1959 Cadillac. which,
yes, sir.
as I noted, was truly an American full-size car. That part is for sure.
Yes. However,
well, you're very, very, very close.
Really?
Yeah, you're closer than I was. So the actual first car to be sold with bucket front seats in a full size was the 1958 Pontiac Star Chief.
Really?
Yes.
Oh man!
So
I was in the ballpark.
No, you were in the front seat. So the fifth, you were 1 year off. So you were closer than me, 3-1, and it's the same platform essentially. All the full sizes were, but it was a GM car. It's right next to Cadillac. So
yeah.
So that's an almost win, right? I mean, it's an almost win right there.
It's an almost win. I've had a lot of almost wins.
Interestingly, those cars, they hadn't figured out the console yet, so it was just buckets on the floor and
I gotcha.
And a column shift. But that was the one. If you get a chance, Google that 58 Star Chief. The interior is insane. It is super cool.
I'm writing that down.
Right on.
58 Star Chief.
All right, so for both being wrong, we're almost kind of right, and that's good for me.
Well, we're starting the year off a little shaky, but it's going to get better from here.
Yeah, it can't get worse.
Right.
All right, man. Well, listen, this has been fun, and hopefully next time from the V8 Radio Studios North, you might be able to just turn around and put your hand on some engine parts or something next time.
Yeah, that's my goal. That is my goal.
That would be awesome.
For sure. Yeah, well, I'll definitely, next time we do this, I hope to have more to report.
Right on. And I'm sure we'll have all kinds of other stuff. You can, if you dig this show, you can always comment on the Facebook page or on our homepage at v8radio.com. You can also tune in on TuneIn Radio, Google Play, Stitcher app, and on iTunes. And possibly more places that I'm not aware of at this point.
Right.
And we'll be sharing this throughout social media and all that kind of stuff. So, thanks for listening, Mike. It was fun.
It was great, Kev. Thank you.
Right on. Thank you. And we'll catch you next time on V8 Radio.